Welcome, everyone. This is Nathan Lindorf with the Rational Independent. This is the Wednesday afternoon drive home live stream. It is a snowy day here in Denver, so I will continue to live stream as long as I'm safe. But if road conditions deteriorate, I may end up ending the stream early. We shall see. I normally try and prepare at least one major topic before I start a live stream. But today has been a little... Sorry, I got a snowplow in my way. Today has been a little bit of a tumultuous day, so we might jump around a little bit. I am continuing a job hunt, looking to replace my current contract position that's coming to a close. I have a handful of positions, but we're doing that dance right now where interested, set an interview, reschedule, have an interview, need a second interview, let's deliberate, revise the resume, send it out again. It's the same old song and dance. So I'm a little preoccupied by that. But let's see if we can find a topic that's a little more interesting for everyone who's not directly related to me. This morning's Reddit rant has been on my mind all day. So because of the snow, it took longer to drive. And because of that, I was basically late for work before I even started my video this morning. So my video was only like 3 minutes long. Really not enough time to get into anything. The article in question was, if you were looking for news, substance, opinion, unbiased, rational thought, any of those things, this article was a complete waste of time. It was in Salon, which is a known leftist rag. It is what it is. So it's not like it's a surprise. But it was at the top of the politics page in Reddit. It had something like 500 comments on it on Reddit. It's only been published today. So there are clearly people in our culture who are reading this stuff and enjoying this stuff, or reading it and being upset about it, reacting to it. It's working. In the attention-based, click-based economy that we have, it was effective. It brought eyeballs to their website. I spent all day thinking about why that is. Because when I can't understand a puzzle, it irks me. And once I understand the puzzle, I can set it down and then go find another puzzle. Which is why being married to me is a tall order. Thankfully, I married a very patient woman. But why do people... Let's put it this way. What is the point of reading something that is not factual, that doesn't even pretend to present a fair set of facts, that is mean, bitter, and divisive? It's not uplifting or edifying. It's not even funny. I'm the first to enjoy a good bit of black humor or even cynicism, but it's just left a bad taste in my mouth. So why do we consume this kind of material? And I have a few theories, and I wanted to kind of expound on those today. Let's see if we can go somewhere interesting. We know that human beings are tribal. We know that tribalism has been part of the human experience for as long as history has allowed. If you look at some of the oldest texts that we have, even back to the Bible, which purports to go back to creation, or I'm less familiar with non-Judeo-Christian religious history, but I assume that the same is elsewhere. Again, one of the things, just to clarify, I don't ever pretend to know everything. There's a bunch of stuff I don't know anything about. I will tell you when I don't know something. I will make an educated guess. I've been around the block enough that I can usually get pretty close to the mark. But I'm not going to lie to you. If I don't know something, I'm going to say, I don't know. So, Human tribalism has been with us for basically as long as history has existed. If you even so look back at Genesis and Exodus, you have pre-nation states, you have collections of people, you have tribes. If you look at Abraham looking for a wife for his son, he goes to his tribe. He goes to his kin's family. I think they're like second cousins or something. I forget the exact genealogy. Why would we do that? When you look at the way the Israelites interacted with the tribes that existed when they returned to their promised land, and again, we're just taking the Bible at face value. I know there's historian nerds that want to argue over all little itty bitty details. I think it's instructive enough if we just take it. Sorry for the interruption. Had a cell phone hiccup. We're just going to take the Bible at face value. I know that some nerds might want to object to that or argue over pedantic details. I think it's instructive as far as the broad shape of human history to just take it as it is. The version I'm the most familiar with is the King James Version. So that's where a lot of my knowledge comes from. So the Israelites that intermarried among different tribes ended up creating generational conflict with the other members of the house of Israel, and with good reason. When you mix your bloodline with another tribe, you're going to merge culture. You're going to change the things that you prioritize. You're going to change who you worship. You're going to do all sorts of, let me see if I can articulate this a little better. When you marry another person and you create a family, you mix your culture that you grew up with their culture that they grew up with. That mixture becomes a new culture. Your new family has a different set of priorities, a different set of beliefs, a different sense of humor, a different food style, a different lifestyle, a different work ethic. Now, there's within a certain standard deviation variation, but you're going to have variation. But humans need more than just themselves to survive. Those who are by themselves die off pretty quickly, even small groups. And so historically, human beings have a tendency to find a like-minded tribe, to find people who see the world similarly enough to them that they can mix with them and support each other and be supported and improve their chances of survival, and even eventually propagating those values either horizontally to other members of their own generation or vertically down into future generations. So we know tribalism is a real factor in this. What we have to deal with is that we live in a society where the tribalist tendencies that are built into our brains are distorted by the fact that we're no longer limited by geography. We're no longer limited in our ability to connect with other like-minded people. And we can scale that connection up far beyond what we were ever able to do historically in ancient times, or even earlier in modern times. The simple truth is, even if you go back to World War I, World War II, if you have a man who's a young man, he gets drafted into the army, he goes and sees the world. He goes all over the world, fights, maybe he dies, maybe he doesn't. Let's assume for the sake of the story that he doesn't. He's gained some exposure to the outside world that historically he wouldn't have gotten. He comes home, maybe he finds a wife, foreign wife, and brings her home. Maybe he comes home and finds a wife from home. He's changed a little bit by the experience. He's brought a little culture back with him. But then he settles back into the routine. He gets a job in his hometown or somewhere close by. He goes to a college. He starts a small business. This is just a hypothetical. But he ends up narrowing again, after a brief period of expansive influence in the world, narrowing again his tribal circle. And that's been the case for pretty much all of human history. But now there are 8-year-olds on TikTok doing unboxing videos of toys that have millions of rabid followers. They are able to influence the economic decisions of millions of households as an 8-year-old. That's unprecedented. That's bananas. I watched a video earlier today of a YouTube personality who was sharp, very well put together man. He was in a suit, very handsome African-American gentleman, a little more seasoned than I. He was very persuasive. He was very well put together. In 100 years ago, maybe he's a famous author. Maybe he tours a lecture circuit. Maybe he's a professor and interacts with young adults serially. So year over year, he interacts with a bunch of adults, but over the course of his career, he teaches maybe 10,000 students. This man gets millions of plays on YouTube. The things that he believes and that he espouses in a very persuasive way can now influence a bunch of people. And the really creepy bit, it's not just live. I'm looking at this, I'm doing something dumb. I'm starting a channel that I have no backing for, that I have no budget to promote. I am not trained in broadcast. My sound quality is not good. I'm doing this from the car. I am giving a subpar performance, less than professional. Let's put it that way. I hope it's good enough to get going. But here's the thing that I have going for me. Like I said, warned you ahead of time. We're going to wander a little bit today. I am willing to work at this. I've learned and trained that. I've learned that about myself, and I've trained that tendency into a dominant piece of my personality. I am willing to put in the work. I am not interested in a life where I retire to a life of ease in the lap of luxury. I want to be challenged. I want to grow. I want to keep learning. I want to keep serving. So I'm engaging with this task, with this workload, understanding that this is a long haul effort. This is not something that wins right away. If this is an overnight success, it's going to take 20 years. That's typically about how it works. But I know I can get there if I'm willing to work. I also know I can get there if I can be consistent. We live in a world of starters. I intend to be a finisher. I intend to stick with this and consistently engage. Now, tying it back to what I was saying a bit ago, this other YouTuber that I was watching, very well put together, very professional, excellent set design, great lighting, sound design, knocks it out of the park. He's very persuasive. And here's the interesting thing. He's not just persuasive in person. He's creating a permanent, universally available repository of his most persuasive thoughts and opinions, available for free for anyone who wants them, not just today, but in perpetuity. He's creating a treasure trove, a royalty stream. He's creating intellectual property that has a value that persists. And much like the network theory of value, which is that the value of any network is worth exponentially more based on the total number of participants in that network. In other words, Facebook with 200 users is worth, let's call it $1,000. Facebook with double that, 400 users, is not just worth double, it's probably worth quadruple. Facebook with billions of users is one of the dominant networks in the world. So It's the same with creative effort. He's creating a repository, and in turn, I also am as well. Right now, nobody knows me. Right now, I get a handful of views every day, which I'm grateful for. I get a couple of comments a week, which I'm grateful for. I want to engage with the audience. I want to understand what people like, what confuses them, what they don't like. I want to serve. So I look forward to that engagement. But I'm keeping all of this up, available to the public forever. There's a weirdo commentator out there, and the only reason I didn't mention the name of the first gentleman, I honestly don't remember his name. Otherwise, I would be happy to drop a plug. But there's another commentator out there that I listen to, again, because I like listening to people I don't agree with, call me weird, called Shoe on Head. She is an avowed leftist. She's a communist, whatever you want to call her. She's a Bernie supporter. She's fairly cute, which helps on the internet. She's got a lot of personality and spunk. Her production quality is pretty crummy, but it comes across as genuine. It clearly works for her. She has videos that are 7 years old that have 10 million views. When she first made that video, she couldn't draw 10 million eyeballs. But as she grew the value of her brand over time, and more people saw parts of her content, they then explored and observed and consumed other parts of her content, creating a network effect within her own creative effort, within her own catalog. That's what I'm doing right now. I am intentionally building the value of this backlog, this catalog, so that over time, as I begin to aggregate views, today, if someone sees me, let's say, so I have almost 200 views in a couple of weeks. Let's say 1% of viewers like my stuff enough to subscribe. Let's say 1% of that 1% would be a super fan, someone who wants to listen to everything that I have to say, someone who would be willing to contribute to a Patreon or in some other way provide direct support, put their money where their mouth is. It becomes a numbers game. But the interesting thing is, let's say one of those potential super fans shows up today. They have 3 weeks worth of videos to digest. But 2 years from now, they have 800 videos to digest. Now they get to swim in a sea of value. You don't have to like it. It's not for everybody. But it becomes more valuable the broader and deeper the creative effort is. So, sorry, having a little ice issue, just a second. Sorry, having a little freezing over on the windshield. Got to be safe. So, now back to our original thesis. Why do people read Salon when they know it's garbage? Well, people read People Magazine. People read Us Weekly. People read TV Guide. People read Playboy for the articles. People consume a lot of stuff that is mostly garbage. Sign me up. I'm sure I do the same. Not the Playboy, but that's a conversation for another day. But think about it. If you are a regular person, a normie, and most people in the marketplace of ideas are just that. They're normies. They are not professional pontificators. They are not news broadcasters. They are not journalists. They are not researchers. They're not producers. They're not writers. They have none of the skills and competencies required to produce the content that they want to consume. They are consumers, for better or for worse. That's most of the marketplace. So, if that's your marketplace, then people are going to, a certain portion of the marketplace, not everybody, but a certain portion, my theory is, they will seek out content that reaffirms their view of the world, that builds them up, supports them, gives them something to chuckle at, something to rub elbows with the cool kids in the high school class, to watch the bully beat up on the little kid, the weirdo, and realize that, hey, if I'm in the in group, I can feel good about being in the in group. And look at all those bad guys over there. There's an old saying I heard once: fools mock, but they shall mourn. There is a social drive, there is a tribal drive to mock the other, to heap scorn and cynicism and ridicule on those we want out of our group, those that we want to oppose. And there's a value to that. That's why it persists. The value is it is a not directly violent, so it's less costly because violence is always expensive. It is a not directly violent way to control the behavior within your tribe and expel those who do not line up with the values of your tribe, thereby reinforcing the effectiveness of this social order that you've established, the cohesion of your tribe. So, if you think back to more ancient times and you look at someone who is in a primitive society, maybe, let's look at a pastoral society with maybe some herds, maybe some light craft work, etc., maybe a little bit of agricultural, etc. And you've got, we've studied this before, you've got about 150 people that you can have in your brain. So you've got a tribe of 100 some odd people. Everyone has their specialty, everyone pulls together, everyone tries to meet their basic needs and survive and propagate their values on to the next people, to the next generation. You might have in that group maybe 5 people, proportionally, maybe 5 people, maybe as much as 10, who are dynamic, charismatic, who are leaders, who are persuasive, who are effective spokespeople for the value of your tribe. They might be village elders, they might be leaders in business, they might be successful herdsmen, they might be successful businessmen, they might be a successful farmer, they might be the town drunk. The challenge that we have is that we live in a world in which that 5% can take their talents at persuasion and preach to a crowd of millions who want their worldview reinforced, who want to be, who want to read something that makes them feel like they're in the in crowd. And that gives that 5% an even greater impact on society as a whole. The lines become blurred as society becomes more complex and as the ways of connecting become more complex. It's no longer as simple as tribal organizations, where a very persuasive farmer can affect the lives of 100, maybe a couple hundred people if something big comes along and it affects a handful of tribes. But now we have brains that are wired to still think and show loyalty and connect in a tribal way, still look for those affinity groups, still want to reinforce those beliefs and feel like we are part of something larger. But we've created this complex and far-reaching society whereby it's no longer a voice that affects a few hundred people. Now it's a voice that affects a million. The Salon article I read this morning was tailor-made to accomplish one purpose. It wasn't to spread facts. It wasn't to debate. It wasn't to engage reason or logic. Reason's got nothing to do with it. It was to inflame emotion, to reinforce people who already agreed with them, and to repulse people who did not. Because if you read that article and you jump into the comments and you say, someone on the internet is wrong, and you jump into the debate and you throw a tantrum because what they've said and done is super inaccurate, I need to set the record straight. You look like you're throwing a tantrum, which is the opposite of persuasive. So you end up with a position where they've reinforced their authority and you have undermined your authority. It's cynical, but it's highly effective. So it's no surprise that the political operators that are seeking to build a useful voting bloc employ bullhorns and willing spokesmen to use their skills of persuasion to reinforce the cohesive feel of a voting bloc so that it feels like you and your tribe are going to go accomplish a purpose. You're going to go reinforce the values that you hold dear. It's kind of like hijacking the human brain. It's kind of creepy and weird, but you can't deny it's effective. I think it's probably worth identifying the elements of the mythos. So let me try and unpack what I'm aiming for a little bit. I like listening to Jordan Peterson because he has a lot of well-defined terminology, being a trained clinical psychologist, so that these concepts, he doesn't have to come up with labels for them. They've already been labeled. I mean, if you just look at a simple example, the Big Five personality, he can discuss the idea of extroversion or agreeableness and tie that label back to a very soundly researched concept that most earnest people who are engaging with this message can understand. All right, this is what he means by that. Whether you agree or disagree, you can at least understand it. Unfortunately, I am an amateur and I have no such ability. So I will do my best to clearly articulate what I mean and probably over time come up with a shorthand that makes sense. But the simple fact of it is, for most of my adult life, I've been politically homeless. I was a psychology major in college, but I was tired of the politics even then, because academics is filled with politics. So I shifted over into technology because I could make more money and I got to be done with the nonsense of school. So I've been self-taught for most of my life, and that leaves me without an easy set of credentials to reference and also without that handy set of agreed upon labels. The downside of that is that can be an impediment to communication. The upside of that is I can bring fresh eyes to a problem because we have a problem in our society. And it ties into this idea of narratives and tribalism on the left and the right, and partisan political maneuvering and propaganda, a lot of the themes that we've touched on already. If you start with a first assumption that you want to build your life around facts, then you don't ever get to the point where you write an article like Salon wrote, and I'll link it in the live stream, this morning that I did on my Reddit rant. I also contend that you never get to the point where you read that and accept it at face value. Because if facts are important to you, then you would see the unfair characterizations and you would be skeptical. And you would say, I don't buy it. You haven't shown me your evidence. You're trying to just preach to the choir. So if you're not already convinced, it's not going to convince you. So, since that's the case, it stands to reason that someone who writes that kind of article, and by extension, an organization that pays someone to write those types of articles, because this isn't a one-off and it's not a passion project for this person. This is their career. This is what they do professionally. They take pride in their work. This is not sloppy. It's one of the things that irks me to no end when you see people on the right and they say, oh, they got their facts wrong. Look how incompetent they are. These are serious professionals. If they got the facts wrong, they did it on purpose. They have a reason for getting their facts wrong. Or at least you should consider the possibility that they did it on purpose. So, why write this type of article if it's not to get at the facts? Well, I think it's a fair supposition, a fair hypothesis that the reason why you write this type of article is because you're trying to build a narrative. By definition, a narrative, as we use it, by definition, a narrative is a construct. It takes a handful of real facts and mixes them in, bakes them into a larger structure that has conjecture and rationalizations and lies and aspersions and half-truths and all sorts of other stuff. And with that, you create a narrative. Why would you want to create a narrative? Because a narrative enables you to persuade the normies to go along with what you want to do, even if what you want to do is bad for the normies. As a case in point, it can be argued that in part, civil rights legislation, but even more than that, more directly, LBJs, one of my rules is I refer to presidents by their title and their last name. I want to be fair. President Johnson's war on poverty created a system of perverse incentives that, while it espoused certain principles people agreed with, in other words, while it presented a narrative that was appealing on the surface, the actual end result of the war on poverty was the destruction of the nuclear family in much of the urban centers of America, with a disproportionate impact on Black Americans who largely live in urban areas. If you look at the statistical evidences, it is completely clear that that is the actual result. But it has been shown